The river has cut through the fields. The water has calmed down, but when it swells again, it will once more take its course through the field, and we will no longer be safe. We have lost our resources. The people who once settled here have moved away. There are no houses and no land. And if there will soon be no fields, what can we do? Floods of the river Ganga have destroyed the livelihood of more than 5,000 families in the Bahraich district in northern India. Overnight, water has washed away the fertile land of the peasants, the main source of income for the community. Their houses built at the riverbanks are now in ruins, and the villagers face an insecure future. My papers have been submitted, but at the last minute could not be found. No official listens to us. In New Delhi, the capital of India, the framework for economical and social development is made, and anti-poverty programs are designed.
This is only a democratic country. A change of governments, the coming political parties are also varying it. They know that we have to come up to the expectation of the people, and we feel within a short period we can eradicate the poverty.
Colorful pictures announce such programs all over the country. One of those programs is especially aimed at providing poor people with ration cards, which entitle them to buy food at reduced rates. However, the people in Bahraich who became landless and homeless overnight were not provided with such ration cards, and other help from the government like new land, alternative jobs, houses, or direct financial support is not in sight. After waiting in vain for government support, the people have started trying to help themselves. Many of them have had to borrow money at extremely high interest rates in order to buy food for the families. Nobody knows how they will be able to repay the loan and the high interest rates without the income from the land, which has been lost in the floods. During the last decade, India's economy has been growing fast, and the economic power of the country is visible everywhere. Today, India has enough resources to implement the various programs aimed at providing support to win the fight against hunger and malnutrition. However, here in Bahraich, as in many other places, the people are suffering violations of the human right to food. How can this be overcome? Not only do the 5,000 families in Bahraich suffer hunger, there are more than 200 million Indians facing starvation permanently. This is more than the whole population of Europe. Worldwide, more than 850 million people are suffering from hunger and malnutrition, but India is the country with the largest number of hungry people. In the year 2000, the 189 states of the UN General Assembly, including India, adopted the UN Millennium Declaration. Those states committed themselves to achieving the Millennium Development Goals, a joint effort to eradicate poverty worldwide by 2015. One of these goals is to halve the number of hungry people by the year 2015. However, the first review of this ambitious program after 5 years has revealed that the absolute number of hungry people in India and throughout the world has, in fact, increased. Why is that so? Surprisingly, during the last decades, food production has risen continuously in India and all over the world. Intensive production has led to increased harvests, the vegetable markets are full, and people with money can choose to buy whatever they like, while the poor sections of the society are facing hunger. India is a food exporting country, and there are more than 25 million tons of food grains in storage. The distribution of these stored supplies could abolish hunger overnight. If there is sufficient production, why must people suffer hunger? The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization FAO emphasizes that the problem is not lack of food, but lack of political will.
I was saying that after 55 years of planned development, so-called planned development, still the political will is lacking towards its people. And then here comes the question, do people have a right to live life, or is it the state's mercy that the state gives whatever it wants to give?
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, composed in 1948, was later translated into the legally binding International Human Rights Covenants. The right to food is most firmly established in the 1966 International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. 151 countries, including India, have currently ratified this covenant. Unfortunately, most states are still far from realizing the right to food for all their citizens.
Most of the states of the world have ratified the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights and are therefore obliged to comply with the obligations deriving under this covenant. Human rights and state obligations are two sides of the same coin. The people have rights and the states have obligations. So one can say that human rights empower people to make states meet their obligations.
Therefore, social movements, non-government organizations and the global civil society have to join hands in fighting against violations of the right to food and must put pressure on the state to act according to the obligations deriving from the international covenants. FIAN was founded in 1986 with a special aim of supporting victims in their struggle for the realization of the right to food. FIAN is the only international human rights organization concentrating its work entirely on economic, social and cultural rights, with a special focus on the right to food. Being a networking organization, FIAN International is built up by national sections and individual members in more than 60 countries in Africa, the Americas, Asia and Europe. It cooperates closely with people from the affected communities, landless and small peasants, rural workers, fisherfolk, pastoralists, indigenous people, women, children, the unemployed and the urban poor. All over India, there are more than 900 FIAN members organized in different chapters. The chapters regularly organize meetings, trainings, symposia, public hearings or exhibitions in close collaboration with the international and national FIAN offices, the local members and the affected people. Such activities aim at creating and increasing the awareness and knowledge of the general public, key representatives of the civil society as well as government representatives. FIAN utilizes its extensive network to monitor carefully cases of violations of the right to food and to initiate different kinds of actions. In cases of violation, information is collected, analyzed, cross-checked, and then appropriate steps are taken to support the victims. by way of lobbying, campaigning, or with the help of international protest letter campaigns, pressure is put on the responsible authorities. The unique strength of FIAN is to link local communities with international support groups to increase pressure. For example, FIAN Norway, in close cooperation with FIAN India, is supporting the struggle of the victims affected by the floods in the Bahraich district. The consultative status of FIAN at the United Nations provides at international level the opportunity to highlight the human right to food violation. We undertook casework in the Bahraich district of Uttar Pradesh, located near the Nepal border. We worked on the issues of ration cards and the problems caused by the flooding of the land by the Ganga river. Many people have been displaced as a result of this. We have tried to make the government sensitive to such problems and, as a matter of fact, the displaced and homeless have been taken up in a survey. Similar results have also been observed elsewhere, so this is an example of successful casework. There are substantial cases of the violation of the right to food in Uttar Pradesh. In our casework, we have been focusing on strong research and data studies. Advocacy work done based on this research has sensitized the government. They have agreed to some of our demands, and they might accept others in future.
It has been very good for FIAN Norway to have this cooperation with FIAN Uttar Pradesh. This means that we have local groups in Norway who work on cases identified by FIAN Uttar Pradesh. And jointly then we can put more pressure on each case with the efforts done with FIAN UP and then with some international support from FIAN Norway. This is really the way FIAN is working in general, but then FIAN Norway and FIAN Uttar Pradesh has then a special interest in each other's cases.
One of the collaborative methods applied by FIAN is to conduct fact-finding missions, whose aim is to generate carefully analyzed facts about violations of the human right to food in strategically selected cases. An internationally composed FIAN delegation goes directly to the location where the violation is prevailing and engages in an intensive consultation process with the key stakeholders. The information collected through observations, interviews, and secondary data is carefully documented, analyzed, and summarized in a report. These reports, comprising rigor information, are the key to exposing situations of violations and creating pressure on responsible authorities at local and international level. Such a visit of an international team and publication of the findings have been essential in supporting the affected groups and movements in the struggle. The members of FIAN envision a world free from hunger, in which every person can fully enjoy the human rights and live in dignity. Sharpening the awareness of the civil society, the exposure of violations of the human right to food on various levels, and the support of the victims in the struggle has proved to be successful in fighting against violations of people's right to food. Joining hands against social and economic injustice and discriminatory practices that prevent people from feeding themselves is the key to shaping a better future. People must have access to land to do agriculture or receive adequate wages for the work in order to buy food. Therefore, FIAN is engaged in monitoring the payment of minimum wages, a precondition for the survival of people without land. The Indian government has already recognized this and has taken various steps to ensure minimum wages. However, in many cases, the actual wages paid are far below the said minimum. Fact-finding members were informed by weavers that they did not get the minimum wages. For 6 days' work, we receive only 200 Indian rupees. Not enough to survive, but we have nothing else to do, so we carry on with the work. We do not know what to do. It is very difficult to look after our children and ourselves. To finish one sari, I have to work 10 to 12 days, for about 10 hours a day. I earn about 350 Indian rupees for the production of one sari, but we don't get enough work. Also, the boss often says, "Come later for your money." I will not teach my children weaving. I want them to learn some other kind of work, such as being a mechanic. This problem is not only prevalent in the informal but also in the formal sector. One severe case of violation of the human right to food by the very government itself was reported to FIAN. Manual scavengers, supposed to clean garbage and human excreta, usually with nothing more than a broom and a tin plate, were not paid the minimum wages by the municipalities. But due to their full economic dependence and the low social status, they were unable to demand higher wages. Analyzing this case revealed that in Gazipur, the scavengers employed by the municipalities were for a long time not considered to be permanent workers, since that would require and make necessary protection, such as sick leave, social security, etc. However, through FIAN's intervention backed up in careful analysis and letter campaigns, the government authorities have finally agreed to pay the minimum wages for them and provide them with a permanent status. The amount of 58.5 Indian rupees, around €1 per day, is not making the Indian government poor, but is providing the necessary resources to the scavengers for their survival. Water is critical to nourishing and fostering life, and is a crucial resource for all living beings. For drinking, growing and cooking food, for personal hygiene and for the raising of cattle. Also, water without pollution is a precondition to prevention of disease. Access to water for personal use is a human right. Sustained access to water for irrigation is a question of survival for about 70% of the Indian population, including farmers and agricultural laborers. Water is the basis for securing the livelihood of millions of fisherfolk in India. However, unsustainable practices in agriculture as well as in industry led to pollution and dramatic depletion of this valuable natural resource. For example, though there are legal provisions in India that demand that effluents from factories be filtered before they are released into the environment, these provisions are often not implemented properly. This thermal power plant in Obra daily releases tons of ash into the environment. The river Renuka, once abundant with fish and known for its clear water, has become a black sewer. People such as fishermen, farmers and agricultural laborers suffer from this kind of environmental damage, yet are rarely compensated for it. FIAN is involved in sharpening the awareness of the government authorities and civil society bodies to the right of water and to the necessary support of the victims of environmental damage caused by private and public enterprises and tolerated by responsible authorities. The river is drying up. It is becoming more and more polluted. What can we poor people do? I was once a fisherman, but due to the water pollution there were no fish anymore and thus no job. The poor are dying. In India, land reforms emerged as an essential development strategy 60 years ago. Since independence, agrarian reform has been seen as the key